the Americas to rise from the primordial ocean. It is covered now by a sea of green, the largest Western Hemisphere rainforest outside the Amazon. Vegetation blankets even the volcanic mountains. Sustained by water, life flourishes. Panama is a paradise, unless your job is to cut through it. There were surveyors sent out by the King of Spain to find a canal route across what is now Panama. They didn't find it. What they found was nearly impenetrable jungle. The first surveyors concluded there was no way to build such a canal, and nearly 500 years ago, there wasn't. The idea lived on. What once seemed impossible is today a wonder of the world, a human triumph, and one of the great stories of all time. An ocean giant, longer than 3 football fields, packed with thousands of truck-sized containers, steered from a bridge 12 stories high. Like dozens of other ships, it's about to enter the Panama Canal. A canal voyage demands navigation so precise that Panamanian pilots with years of experience board every vessel. A ship's captain cedes command to the specialist, who knows every inch of the route ahead. question is, why go to the trouble of cutting a pathway for ships through 50 miles of forest and mountains? Previously, ships risked a long and dangerous voyage around South America. Shipwrecks littered the seafloor. The only alternative was to ship cargo to Panama, the narrowest part of Central America, and carry it over land to a vessel on the other side. The trek was grueling and slow, whether hauling the gold of the conquistadors or mail for California 300 years later. But it made Panama a crossroads of the world. A rail line was built when the California gold rush brought a flood of miners headed west. It has carried people across the isthmus for more than 150 years. But most of the world's commerce travels in ships, not trains. Enter a French entrepreneur named Ferdinand de Lesseps. He had created Egypt's Suez Canal. He vowed to do the same thing in Panama. De Lesseps' idea was a mammoth cut, 30 feet below sea level, all the way through the land. But Panama was not Egypt, not a dry and flat desert. Panama was crossed by a major river, the Chagres, and 8 months of rain a year drenched the land. The tropical setting was beautiful, but for workers, it was also hot, humid, and remote. Men with axes, picks, and crude steam shovels would have to dig a trench nearly a mile wide and 350 feet deep through a mountain range of solid rock. They would have to move more earth than humans had ever moved before. Worse, they would have to survive one of the world's greatest killers without even knowing it was a killer. Nine years of rain, mudslides, stubborn jungle, and disease defeated the French. As many as 20,000 died. The waters of Panama washed away their dream. President Theodore Roosevelt saw a chance to control 2 oceans if the U.S. built the canal. Panama was a protectorate of Colombia. When a deal with the Colombians failed, Roosevelt sent a U.S. gunship to support Panamanian patriots. The revolution took 1 day, November 3rd, 1903. Panama was now a sovereign country. How did the engineers of more than 100 years ago devise a way to sail huge ships through the wilds of Panama? Going back in time, we can see the landscape that faced the arriving Americans. They realized that their biggest challenge was the turbulent, flood-prone Chagres River, which could wipe out their work. Chief Engineer John Stevens figured out how to use the river, rather than to fight it. Instead of digging a sea-level canal, he could dam the Chagres. Ships would sail across Panama on a lake. The Americans wouldn't need to dig through the entire country. Stevens would build stair steps of water on either side to raise ships to the lake. Locks had been built before, but never on such a colossal scale. They would still have to cut through the western mountains, but not as deeply as the French. Stevens recognized that his diggers needed a reliable train system to carry the dirt away. He completely overhauled the Panama Railway. The Americans had a plan now. But they could not succeed until they stopped the diseases killing workers. The mystery was, what caused yellow fever and malaria? Most believed they came from poisonous vapors in the rainforest. But an American doctor named William C. Gorgas knew that recent research identified two kinds of mosquitoes as the disease carriers. Proving that mosquitoes in Panama cause yellow fever, malaria, and other diseases changed medicine. Dr. Gorgas's public health campaign saved thousands of lives and served as models around the world. The Americans mounted a huge eradication program. Within 2 years, the Canal area was cleared of yellow fever. With healthier workers, the odds of success rose. Mishaps and difficulties continued, but so did progress. Tourists arrived to see the great feat of engineering. It took 10 years, but with a design that turned water from enemy to ally, the canal was completed. In August of 1914, the SS Ancon made the first official passage through the canal, but the achievement went little noticed. World War I began the same day. More than 1 million ships have passed through since. The canal changed global shipping, cutting the trip between the Atlantic and Pacific by 8,000 miles and 3 weeks. It's one of the most famous places on Earth. But few of us understand how the Panama Canal works. The trip starts with tugboats guiding a ship through a channel to the first line. Because the locks are a tight fit, steering cables are connected to the vessel. Ahead, lock gates 8 stories high, the largest ever made at the time of construction. Simple and ingenious, they are based on a Leonardo da Vinci design from the 15th century, with double doors sealed shut by water pressure. Today, a computerized hydraulic system controls them, but for nearly 100 years, the gates were opened and closed by hand for every passing ship. Cleverly, the gates were built hollow. It only takes a small motor to move them. Ships sail through under their own power, but steering is another matter. The steel cables are now secured to small locomotives that maneuver the vessel by tightening or slackening the lines. It's a nerve-wracking job. Sometimes there is less than 1 foot between the hull and the concrete wall. Some people call locomotives mules, after the animals that worked early-day canals. These mules can each pull 35 tons. It takes 8 to steer the largest vessels. To keep things simple, only the pilot speaks. Mule drivers acknowledge in an ancient way. When a ship is in the chamber and the gates are closed, water races in, millions of gallons, all of it coming from the lake in the middle of the canal. And all of it moved only by gravity. There's not a single water pump in the Panama Canal. Water, soft and fluid enough to run through our fingers, is so strong it can lift a 70,000-ton ship 3 stories high in 10 minutes. Water even supplies the electricity that powers the gates and valves and the locks. It comes from turbines in the original dam that made the canal possible. When water in the lock chamber reaches the level of water on the other side, the gate opens. The ship moves to the next chamber. In stair-step fashion, 3 sets of locks at either end of the canal raise and lower ships in 2 lanes. About 40 a day pass through, then sail across what came to be called Gatun Lake. The ship channel through the lake follows the ancient riverbed of the Chagres. On the other side, the process works in reverse, dropping ships back down through 3 locks. A transit takes about 10 hours, all of it accomplished using the power of water. In a way, the 10,000 people operating the Panama Canal are really running a gigantic water management company. One of them trained for 10 years to be a pilot and has guided more than 1,000 large vessels through the canal.
I'm Captain Miguel Rodriguez. I'm the Executive Manager for Transit Operations and the Canal Operations Captain. And I've been working with the Panama Canal for the last 32 years. You don't find this anywhere else in the world, the way we do piloting in the canal, where we actually take over control of navigation and the movement of the vessels, is unique. Vessels that are over 80 feet in beam require 2 pilots to take it through the Panama Canal. Vessels that are over 900 feet in length require 3 pilots to go through the Panama Canal. control pilot takes it the first half, and then the second control pilot takes over at the halfway point and takes it the rest of the way out to sea.
Another crucial job is maneuvering a tugboat that leads vessels between the sea and the locks. Captain Alan Barnes deals with multi-million-dollar ships carrying cargo worth a small fortune.
Our main responsibilities here are to ensure the safe passage of the transiting vessels by assisting the pilots. The job is always changing, and you gotta adjust to every changing situation that happens. We are always there to assist the pilots so that no damage happens either to the structures of the Panama Canal or to the ships that are passing through.
From the beginning, the people of Panama hoped the canal would belong to them one day. In 1977, the dream came to pass. U.S. President Jimmy Carter and Panama's leader Omar Torrijos signed a treaty giving Panama complete control of the canal. Panama took over 2 decades later. Some were concerned the country might not be up to the task. But operation of the canal has continued without a hitch.
It's a very unpopular thing among the American voters to do that, but it was the right thing to do. And I think it's worked out beautifully because I understand that now, compared to when the Americans had control of the canal, income from the canal has increased 5 times as great as it was. It's operated absolutely beautifully. So I think in every way, it's been good for the United States, it's been good for the Panamanian people, it's been good for everyone who uses the canal.
Today, at the port of Cologne on the Atlantic side, people from around the world arrive to glimpse the legendary canal with their own eyes. Cruise ships sail through it almost daily. But the real business of the canal is commercial shipping. 300 million tons of goods move through every year. Tens of thousands of automobiles. The ingredients of maybe half the foods we eat. Materials used to build homes and offices. There are other man-made wonders, but most benefit the people of only one region. The entire world sends and receives vital goods through the Panama Canal. But ships have changed since the canal was built. It accommodates vessels 100 feet across and 1,000 feet long that carry up to 5,000 containers. But in recent decades, enormous ships have appeared that carry up to 13,000 containers. Stood upright, they would be nearly as high as the Empire State Building. Such ships now carry a majority of the world's cargo, but they're too big for the Panama Canal. Something had to be done. Leaders of Panama's Canal Authority searched for a way to keep the canal competitive. Led by the CEO at the time, Alberto Alamanzubieta, who became the architect and driving force of change.
The expansion project has been called the most important transportation project in the Americas. I believe it's one of the most important projects in the world. And the reason is because we're going to modify one more time the way goods are moved between the 2 biggest oceans, the Pacific and Atlantic.
After several years and 150 studies, they decided on an immense expansion of the canal. The entry areas would be dredged deep enough for larger ships. 3 huge new locks would be built at each end of the canal. The plan would raise the level of Gatun Lake while deepening channels through the lake and the western mountains. The expansion would ensure Panama's future, and it would change global shipping. In 2007, the fun began. Tens of millions of cubic yards of soil and rock would have to be removed. The water management company would now also become a giant earth-moving company. The effort would require partners around the world.
When we count all of the countries that have been somehow involved with this project, including not just the locks project, but all of the dredging and the earth-moving part of the project, we're looking at over 35 countries that are represented here. Biggest technical challenge that we foresaw in this program was actually the logistics of it. Deployment of equipment would have to take place from all over the world, and also some of the fabrication, like example, gates would have to be fabricated elsewhere, not in Panama, and those would have to be transferred to Panama, transported overseas, and eventually arrive in Panama for installation.
The new 10-story high gates, weighing 4,300 tons each, were built in Italy. Getting them to Panama posed an historic challenge. No cargo like them had ever crossed an ocean. A huge ship was customized to carry 4 gates at a time. Delivering the 16 gates would take 4 voyages and 8 months.
A lot of earth is being moved, almost as much earth has been moved this time than on the original construction.
The expansion demanded cutting-edge lock technology and the latest construction techniques. It would take 20,000 workers. Among them is Ilia Espino de Marota, a Panamanian native and mother of 3, who has spent nearly 30 years as a canal engineer.
Managing a project of this size with over 200 contractors is challenging and rewarding. You have to learn to deal with different people of different countries also, because we have a consortia from 3 different countries. We also have the Pack 4 people that has people from Mexico. We have people from Costa Rica. We have people from Italy, Spain, Belgium. You need to learn how all these different cultures need to work together. The new canal, even though it's much larger, it's 7% less water per lockage. So per ship, we're going to use 7% less water. And we're going to put 3 times the amount of cargo.
Others help dredge channels deep enough for holes that reach 5 stories down. Among them, Elia's husband Peter, captain of a dredge that has worked in canal waters more than 30 years.
The expansion of the canal is not just the building of the new locks. There is involved the deepening of the existing waterway, the widening of the waterway, the moving of the buoys and the lighthouses that guide the ships through.
In the new locks, gates slide in and out on tracks. Double gates mean one can be repaired without stopping traffic. The main culverts filling or draining water are so large, 2 trains could pass within them. The locks are a leap forward in engineering and in green technology. 2/3 of the water is stored in basins, then recycled. The ships using the new locks are too big to be steered by locomotive mules and cables, so tugboats will guide them through. The expansion brings the canal into the 21st century and reinstates it as the world's most vital waterway. Panama has other wonders besides the canal. It is home to an extraordinary diversity of animal and plant species that have migrated from both North and South America to this middle ground. Panama has the biggest concentration of coastline compared to landmass in all of Latin America. Some 6,000 islands rise along the Caribbean coastline and about 1,000 on the Pacific side. Parts of the rainforest remain as wild as they were in the days of the Spanish explorers. The indigenous population descended from the people living in Panama when the conquistadors arrived 5 centuries ago consists of 7 native tribes. Some live in comarcas, semi-autonomous reservations, where the Panamanian government has little say over their daily lives. They control large tracts of land, which cannot be developed without their consent. In a way, they serve as protectors of the land. Once just a remote isthmus, Panama serves as a crossroads of the entire world, which has also made it a unique melting pot of humanity. Panama City has grown into a business center midway between North and South America, a magnet for international businesses and banks. The country has the strongest economy in Central America, one of the strongest in all of Latin America. A long time has passed since the Spaniard Vasco Núñez de Balboa discovered that Panama was a link between the Atlantic and Pacific. But the country is living in the best moment of its history, mostly because of the Panama Canal, newly revitalized, ready for the future, and still a wonder of the world. While Panama is protected because it has to be, The people and the economy all depend on preserving the forests, which store rainfall like sponges and fill Gatun Lake, which feeds the Great Canal. Turns out, it is possible to connect the greatest seas on Earth, to prosper as a rising power in the world, and to remain still a timeless paradise. The secret, as Panama found, is not to fight the forces of nature, but to live harmoniously with them. To turn an abundance of water into a wellspring of prosperity and hope, and a gift to the entire world.